couple of weeks ago, when I was preaching this sermon up at All Saints, I've had a few weeks gap in between, our 10-year-old son Josh came home distraught that Thursday because of something which had happened at school where he'd not been particularly well treated. I'm not going to go into details, and he has given me permission to share this story with you. But he was so upset that evening, and Alice and I, if we're honest, were quite angry, as you go into protective parent mode, don't you? And we were really upset too to see him like this. I must admit that my reaction was to want revenge, was to want justice, was to want to go in and make a fuss and just get our own map on those making life difficult for him. But Josh quietly described to us how in his disappointment he had responded. Not with vengeance and anger, but he responded with words of kindness and grace to his friend who'd been at the centre of this issue. Josh had not sought to get revenge or to make things difficult for others, despite the clear pain that he was feeling. And he'd chosen to bless and chosen to take the path of kindness in the face of adversity, even though it was really costly to him. And I must admit, Alice and I were stopped a bit dead in our tracks. And Alice then shared with Josh how her reading that very morning had been the very reading we're looking at today from Luke 6. Love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. And then I was able to share how I was in the middle of writing a sermon on this. I hadn't got my introduction yet. Little did I realise he was giving me my introduction. And Alice and I simply looked at each other, and our anger and our desire for revenge and justice just began to melt away. And we said, Josh, what you've just demonstrated to us is what Jesus' response looks like. Just what Jesus is meaning. Well done. Well done for choosing the difficult and painful path that Jesus so often calls us to. It was one of those moments when our 10-year-old, soon to be 11, as I need to remind myself, just revealed something so deep of God's heart, something so profound of God's way, that spoke more powerfully than anything I could write a sermon on or preach. And we were so proud of it. How we need to be open to learning from our children, don't we? That's why Jesus said in Matthew 18, he said, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. So you see, following Jesus isn't simply about believing a set of beliefs or attending our weekly dose of church or saying our prayers each day. All those are good things. But actually following Jesus, living the kingdom way, that's the title of this series, is about living differently. It's about following a new path, a radical path, a path which we pray will see God's kingdom come in our communities and bring transformation on earth as it is in heaven. You know, that's what Jesus invites us to. That's what actually it means to live out our strapline, partnering with God in the flourishing of our communities. I've been reading a book recently by a guy called Michael Frost, and the book's called Surprise the World, 5 Habits of Highly Missional People. Don't worry about that. But in the opening chapter of the book, basically he goes into a dialogue as to asking the question, why did the early church have so much impact? You see, on Pentecost there were 120 believers. That's all. 120 people. Well, sort of 12 people started the movement. By Pentecost there were only 120 left, we reckon. But by the year AD 300 there were 5 million Christians all around the Roman Empire. And what was it? What was it that led to such a rapid expansion? Well, he says a whole load of things, but particularly he says actually two things. He says there were two types of people. There were the gifted evangelists, the Pauls and the Peters, who were proclaiming the gospel so powerfully and so anointedly and so clearly. But he said alongside them were the hundreds and thousands of ordinary people, and I quote this, ordinary people infiltrating every part of society and living the kind of questionable lives that evoke curiosity about the Christian message. They surprised the Roman Empire with their unlikely lifestyle. That's quite a quote, isn't it? And I love that phrase, questionable lives. It doesn't mean, not questionable as in dodgy and corrupt and Donald Trump-esque, but questionable as in living radically and living in a way which led people to question, what is it that's different about you? Who is this God that you say you worship? What is this Christian thing about which means that you behave in such a different way to everybody else? And there are some amazing stories of the early church and how they lived radically and lived questionable lives. You know, there's stories in history, not from Christians, but in non-Christian historians, who describe how the early Christians rescued babies that were thrown away on rubbish tips. And they went and got them and looked after them and nurtured them as they grew up. It was the Christians who looked after the widows and looked after the outcasts. We've seen this stuff, haven't we, on the across today. What an amazing line, wasn't it? That Aringa, it's a place that I've been to. Aringa is a place where now, what was it, that people with disabilities are now it's known for looking after people with disabilities. That's amazing. That's the transformation that's brought. That's what the early Christians did. They shared, we're told in Acts, they shared their possessions and had everything in common so that there was no one in their communities in need. That's amazing. And it was the lives of those early Christians living radically, living questionable lives, which I think gave huge impetus to the spread of the gospel. It was what made people around them in a climate of many gods and many philosophies, not unlike today. It was what made them sit up and take notice and say, what is this about this Christianity thing? And maybe actually there's a lesson for us here in this, isn't there? That actually we too live in this not too dissimilar culture, a culture where Christianity is increasingly sidelined. It's no longer the dominant voice, the dominant religion of the day, where it's often pushed into the shadows and marginalised, where a lot of people, for a lot of people, church and God have just no meaning whatsoever. How are we going to reach those people? Well, actually maybe the way that God can use us to draw those people to Him is for us to live questionable lives. Lives where people look at our lives and say, why are you living so differently? What is it about you Christians which means that you care for what goes on in the Brook Farm community? What is it about you Christians that you are again wanting to get into the schools and support the most underachieving pupils? What is it about you Christians that goes and sets up the Bridge Education Development Centre, which actually looks after the people that actually just the rest of the system fails? What is it about you Christians that does that? You know, that's how I think actually God is calling us to be. And He'll use that to draw others who don't yet know Him to Him. And it all comes because we're called to live radical, questionable lives. So why was it that the church, early church, behaved so radically? Well, you know, I think it was simply because they'd seen Jesus modelling it. They'd seen Jesus come in and live a different way. They'd seen this Jesus, who was the promised Messiah, getting down and washing the disciples' feet. They'd seen this Jesus, this great teacher, going and welcoming the stranger and the outcast and touching the untouchable, who no one else would have any contact with. They saw this Jesus hanging on the cross, saying, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. They'd seen Jesus model this questionable life, this radical way. And not only had they seen Jesus modelling it, but actually they'd heard Jesus teaching it. They'd heard Jesus teaching people to live questionable, radical lives. And today we're looking at some of that teaching, aren't we? We're looking at this teaching where Jesus talks about actually how we're to love our enemies. You know, it's tough stuff, isn't it? Let's have a look at those words. Love your enemies, do good to those who hurt you, bless those who persecute you, pray for those who ill-treat you. Let's just pause, let's just dwell on that for a moment in silence. Let those words really sink into us. Love our enemies. It's not easy, is it? And perhaps we start by simply saying to God, I can't love them, but will you give me your love to help me love them with your love? Seek to do good to them. Jesus says, don't return evil with evil. Don't just continue that cycle of revenge, but instead break that cycle and do good to them instead. Choose to take that different path, however costly and painful that is. Bless those who curse you. Bless, this is just such, I said this morning's congregation, the early congregation, I said blessing I think is God's word of the year for us. And actually I think we're going to hear more about that tonight at Ignite, tomorrow at Ignite. I think it's going to be really important for us. But God's talking a lot to us about blessing. What does blessing mean? Well, I think sometimes it's easy to think, what's the opposite of it? Well, I think cursing is the opposite of blessing. Cursing, speaking badly, wanting pain and destruction on people. Yet blessing is the opposite. It's actually speaking good on people, praying for God's goodness on people, praying for God's life and God's transformation to overcome the pain and the hurts. Do come along to hear more about this blessing stuff at Ignite. And I just think it's so powerful to say in these situations, to say how costly and hard it is for us just where we have people who we're struggling with, who've hurt us, to say, I bless you in the name of Jesus. You know, it doesn't mean that actually what they've done isn't wrong. But actually to say, I'm going to come in a different way, I'm going to come in a different spirit. And I'm going to say, I bless you. I want God's goodness and God's transformation on you. In the name of Jesus. That's not belittling what they've done. It's not avoiding the pain that it's caused. But that's the path God calls us to do. And pray for them. Pray for those who mistreat you. Why does God ask us to pray for them? Well, I think partly it's for them. That actually we pray that God will transform them. That's the blessing stuff. But I think partly a lot of it is for us. You know, from my experiences, I've prayed for those who have hurt me and who I have struggled with. My experience is that God softens my heart and that God changes me and that God helps me to see them as He sees them and to begin to love them with His love. Love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. You know, it's a great start, isn't it? It's great practical advice of living Jesus' way, and that's flipping difficult, isn't it? And we could just stop there. And I would look at that and I think, I can't do that on my own. And you know, that's right, we can't do this on our own. But God doesn't ask us to. He gives us His Spirit so that actually we can do things in the power of His Spirit. But I'm afraid Jesus doesn't stop there. This is only the first verse. And Jesus goes on to say even harder things. Let's look at them. He gives two stark examples of what this looks like. He says, if someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. And then he says, if someone takes your coat, don't withhold your shirt from them as well. It's tough stuff, so we need a cartoon of a bit of light-heartedness. There you go. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And the caption underneath, during the main event, Randy landed countless combination punches after exposing his opponent's weakness for literal scripture interpretation. You know, hang on a minute, we might say, I can just about cope with the loving and the doing good and blessing and praying, but actually isn't this just asking me to go a bit far? Isn't this actually just a bit beyond what God really should call us to? But you know, Jesus shows us that we're called to go this extra step. We're not just to live nice, good lives like lots of well-meaning residents of Malvern and St Andrew's congregation do. We're not just called to be nice, but we're called to be radical and to go one step further as Jesus did. But why? But why does Jesus teach us to go beyond just being nice? Why does he ask us to respond in such a radical way? Well, I think it's really important to say, first of all, that actually what Jesus isn't saying here. I think it's really important to state that actually Jesus isn't saying we should turn a blind eye to public justice and wrongdoing. Bob, our safeguarding officer, and I attended a course at the diocese on Thursday about domestic abuse and domestic violence, a real issue in our communities. And we saw some quite painful stuff there. And actually this isn't saying turn the other cheek means just ignoring that and saying that's all right. That's not what Jesus is saying at all. Jesus' heart breaks for that stuff. And actually he wants us as a church to be the voice and be bringing transformation in those areas. And we are, as part of the safeguarding role now, is actually particularly being there for domestic abuse cases than we have been. I don't think Jesus either is saying that if someone nicks your mobile and then just say, here you go, I'm a Christian, have my keys and have my car too. I don't think it's quite as simple as that, what Jesus is saying. But I think what he is doing is calling us in many situations to seek a new way of responding personally. A way which demonstrates to our society around us the character of God himself, and to offer a way that potentially will bring healing and restoration. There's a guy called Glenn Stassen who has done some studies on the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew, which really is the equivalent. This is the equivalent passage to that in Luke. Matthew sets it on a mountain, Luke sets it on a plain, but a lot of the teaching is similar. And when he looks at that, basically, this guy has said that the sermon isn't made up of just a load of high ideals or hard teachings. But he says it's made up of a series of what he calls transforming initiatives. Transforming initiatives. He describes it as grace-based breakthroughs. A bit of a tongue twister. Grace-based breakthroughs in the reign of God. In other words, these are responses which demonstrate the character and grace of God, and which have the potential to transform a situation and turn it around for good. He says that the goal of our actions should be that we allow ourselves to be channels of God's grace, allowing God to work through us to bring transformation into these situations. Now, we're not called as Christians just to be doormats, but we are called to be strong men and women of God who are prepared to, if necessary, if God calls us to lay aside our rights in order to make the right response. The response that God would want us to make, the response that will bring transformation. So let's very quickly look at these couple of examples that Jesus gives us here. First of all, the slap cheek barrier. Just a bit of history, so I won't hit you, is that in sort of the cultural times of the time, actually people didn't really use their left hand for anything other than wiping their bottom. So people basically would have slapped with their right hand. And actually people think is that actually, particularly masters, when they were slapping their slaves and actually just trying to exert their authority over slaves, would have slapped in a backhanded way like this. Okay? Which basically says, I'm powerful over you, I'm in control, and you know it. So when actually Jesus says, turn to them the other cheek also, they wouldn't do a left-handed back slap, because they don't use the left hand. So it would have forced them to have slapped, rather than backhanded, forehanded. And that forehanded slap, in effect, was a way of saying, actually, you're slapping me not as my master, but now as an equal. So by saying, turn the other cheek, There's that sense of, it's saying, you're not going to just run away and just say nothing and just avoid doing anything. You're not going to hit him back. But actually, by your actions, you're making him slap you as an equal and hoping that actually by slapping you as an equal, that might transform his thinking to say, hang on a minute, what am I doing here? And bring some transformation. Does that make sense? Oh, yes, no. Well, no. So that's the first example there. And then the second example was the example of the coat. So in the second instance, he's talking about when someone takes your coat, don't withhold your shirt from them as well. Now, what's that all about? Well, in those times, particularly, people just had a shirt, generally would have just had a shirty tunic and a coat. And they'll be the only two things that they generally wore. And they often would have used a coat for at night as a blanket as well, but particularly poor people. And it's likely here that Jesus is thinking of a rich creditor who's actually taking the coat of a poor person for an unpaid debt. And so when he's saying, if they take your coat, actually give them your shirt as well. Well, if they take the coat off you and then they take the shirt off you, what's going to happen is actually you're going to have nothing left on top. And so the idea is that maybe this man will stand in court, stark naked on top, in front of the person who's demanding this from him. And maybe, just maybe, seeing him there, stark naked there on top, will actually make him think differently about what he's doing to this poor man. Do you see what these are? A transforming initiatives where you're saying, we're going to act differently, which is showing something of the generosity and character of God, but is also giving the perpetrators a potential way of being transformed and actually acting differently because of your response. And that, I think, I find that very helpful when thinking about this. And as we come to a close, I want to say to us, I wonder what following this teaching might look like for us. I wonder whether you have any difficult situations at the moment, people that you're struggling with, people that have hurt you, people that are being really difficult with you, who are perhaps speaking badly of you. But what would it look like to live this stuff out? What might God be asking you to do to offer a radical transforming initiative? Maybe actually that's about returning hatred, hateful words, with words of blessing. Maybe it's about returning those hurtful words or those hurtful actions with acts of kindness and words of kindness. Maybe it's about coming in the opposite spirit to those who have been unjust to you and demonstrating them still the generosity and the grace of God by your actions. You see, that's what I think living a questionable life looks like. That's the sort of living that Jesus calls us to. Living which just goes beyond just being nice like everybody else, like the rest of the middle class Malvern. Jesus calls us to radical living which may well call us to lay down our own rights and our comforts in order to make the right response, the Jesus response, which can be a transforming initiative, which breaks that cycle of hate and revenge and injustice and causes others to be pointed to Jesus. Pointed to the Jesus who, 2,000 years ago, on the cross, carried out the biggest and most significant transforming initiative of all time. As he hung there on the cross, as he was beaten, as he was insulted, as he was rejected for doing nothing wrong, he remained silent. He said, "Father, forgive them, they know not what they do." He blessed them. And he did that. That was his transforming initiative for each one of us. for you and for me, for every single person who's ever lived. When we didn't deserve it, when we had rejected God, when we are still in our sin and our brokenness and our pain and our mistakes and our shame. That was his action, not waiting for us to respond back to him, but he came and did it anyway. To bring us freedom, to bring us forgiveness, to defeat evil, to transform and restore the whole of creation. On the cross, Jesus modelled this to us. He modelled this transforming initiative for each and every one of us. And Jesus invites us to follow his example. He invites us to live the sort of questionable life that he lived, that those first Christians lived. We said we're not just going to be nice, but we're going to be radical in the way we live. To demonstrate that God is a generous God, a God of grace, a God who accepts us even though we don't deserve it. A God who no one is actually beyond restoration for. To demonstrate God's great love for each and every person. He invites us to live those lives, to demonstrate that, to shine that to a world which isn't interested in God for most of the time. But he gives us the chance to point others through our questionable lives to him. You know, Josh, 3 weeks ago, modelled to me something of what that looks like. And I pray that Josh's story and Jesus' story will inspire us, will draw us in God's power, in God's strength, to do the same. To bring glory to God, to point others to him, and to demonstrate to our communities and our broken world the grace and generosity and love of God.